Let's go ahead and bring in Randy Zelin. He's a criminal defense attorney. He's joining me now on the phone. Randy, you heard that press conference from the prosecutor. What do you make of it?
You heard a prosecutor who understands what his role is. A prosecutor's job is to do justice, not to simply get a conviction. That goes all the way back to 1935 when the chief judge at the Supreme Court spoke about the role of a prosecutor. You heard it in his voice, that genuine sense of sorrow that this really was a tragedy. But in looking at this case, he determined correctly that he could not get a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt against the mother, against any other caretaker, having to do with either putting this child in danger or even going so far as to stretch it and say that there was some kind of criminal cruelty to the animal as a result of the animal getting shot. Call it what you want. It was not a crime. And he, I believe, handled this correctly.
Randy, stand by. I want to bring in our CBS News correspondent, Jamie Yuccas, who was at that press conference that our viewers were just watching and listening to, and she joins us now. Jamie, in the statement that the prosecutor released, he says, none of the witnesses interviewed described the mother as anything but attentive to her children. But he, during that press conference, talked about the reaction on social media and in the public, some equating the moral equivalence of the life of the gorilla to the life of a child.
Conference in that particular point, Josh, because it's one of those things. They went and they talked to 4 different witnesses. They visited the zoo 4 different times, and they heard the same thing each and every time, that this mother had 4 children with her. She was very, very attentive. She turned for just a moment. Now, we've heard from other witnesses that the little boy had maybe had a little bit of an argument. He had wanted to get into the gorilla cage, and mom kept telling him, no, behave. And that's what witnesses said as well. But then she turned for just a second to one of her other children, and that's when he ended up in the enclosure, and this unfortunate situation happened. And that's really what the prosecutor's office was talking about today, that this is just an unfortunate situation that ended up happening. And he stressed over and over again that if you have never seen a 3-year-old be able to get away from a parent very, very quickly, then you must not be a parent or have been around a 3-year-old. So trying to make the point that this is something that can happen. It unfortunately did happen, and he hopes that people start taking a look at maybe some of their actions. He said he had gotten hundreds of emails over the last couple of days, and he was shocked by some of the content of those emails where people were equating human life to animal life, and that if you really take a look at that video, that we're just so lucky that that 3-year-old little boy did not die, and that there isn't a gorilla dead as well as the 3-year-old that's dead in this case. So he's hoping that people let up a little bit on this mother, because it, in his mind, is just an accident.
Jamie, stand by. Randy, I want to ask you a question. The prosecutor at one point saying that had this been a case, and he specifically said if the mother was using drugs, and he said crack, if she was smoking crack or something, then there might have been a reason, a rationale to charge her with a crime. But I wonder, even if the mother had been, for example, on her telephone, Randy, would that have been enough to charge her with a crime?
That becomes a much closer call. But again, when a prosecutor makes a decision about charging a crime, the prosecutor has to be thinking about his closing argument, his arguments to the jury, and waiting there while the jury deliberates. And if that prosecutor does not believe that he can get a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt, in other words, that the jury does not need any additional information in order to come back with a conviction, then the wise decision is you don't bring the case. Being on a cell phone, it would require us to know much more. Maybe the mother was dealing with an emergency with another child. Maybe the mother was dealing with a medical emergency with a family. You don't know these things, and she's not necessarily required to give that information away, as she's got a privilege against incriminating herself. So, yes, if she were chit-chatting with a friend, if she were having an argument with her husband over dinner, and she wasn't paying attention to the child, could it be argued that she was acting in a manner likely to be injurious to the child? Then the answer is possibly. But possibly doesn't get you a conviction. Possibly is, in fact, reasonable doubt, and that's an acquittal.
Jamie, before I let you go, I want to ask a question about what it's been like to report this story from Cincinnati. Clearly, there was a lot of chatter on social media. People who were not there, people who didn't even know all the facts, who were saying, as the prosecutor said, they were at some point threatening the mother of this child. But I also saw a lot of reports of people saying, look, for all of those that are attacking the mother for not being responsible responsible. There are people who eat meat and they don't ever look at the situation whereby, you know, poultry in this country, cows in this country are treated in a way to get meat to our tables. So I just want to know what the vibe was specifically in Cincinnati, not only from the people that were there, but also in the community.
Well, I can tell you, Josh, that I've been really struck by the fact that the people here really respect the Cincinnati Zoo and the zoo director. He's somebody that's in very good standing here, and they love their zoo. It's a place that, as you heard the prosecutor even say, that he took his children to growing up, and it's one of the jewels of the city. So I think in one sense, you had that outrage online as well toward the zoo, whereas here in Cincinnati, people said, well, wait a second, this is a place that we really care about and love, and it's part of our community. And the zoo director is someone who's done a lot of work within the community. I think towards the mother, you know, that's been an interesting topic of conversation. It's much like on social media. No matter where my producer and I went out for several days, people wanted to talk about it, and they all had an opinion about her and what may or may not have happened. But I think as some of the information started coming out, she in the community here works for a daycare. She does have 4 children, and some of the other statements that we heard from people is that this is a good mother, and that's, you heard from the witnesses saying that she was there on Memorial Day weekend with her 4 kids. She had taken them to the zoo with a friend, that this little boy was a little rambunctious. He had gotten through. So it's interesting. I think here in Cincinnati, it's been a lot more sensitive toward both the family and the zoo than what we've seen online across the country, for sure.
All right, Jamie Yuccas reporting for us in Cincinnati. Randy Zelin, we thank you as well, sir.
Thank you.